Hey guys, welcome to episode 4 of the Empower Together podcast. Today I've got Sean Barber joining me today.
Thank you.
Sean, give us a little intro. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Where would you like to start?
So let's start off with your bodybuilding career.
Okay, so bodybuilding, I guess, commenced for me in, I would say, 2014. Okay, so it was actually a friend of mine, a training partner at the time. He was into it already. I was into my training, I guess, but nothing to the level or severity that it is required to be a successful bodybuilder. And I think from the sort of outset, watching it, it seemed quite obscure, very, I guess, feminine to me, not really knowing what's involved. Almost, I guess, gay,
Yeah.
you know, a man oiled up, dong on stage. So I went along to his show. He was fairly successful, and then the kind of vibe and the atmosphere, sort of camaraderie that you get from being at a show, it was appealing. And just from going to that one show in I think it was 2014, I was hooked. Literally from that moment on. Just then being able to take my own training, my own physique, to see how far I could push it. I then decided to do my own first show, which was in men's physique, natural at the time. I trained as a natural for about 6 years, I think, before deciding to go to the fucking dark side. But that first show I did in men's physique with the UK DFBA. This was before sort of social media, before prep coaches and things like that. So kind of anything that I was doing was kind of self-taught to a large extent and degree. I did actually hire a coach from about 8 weeks out. And like I said, back then, they weren't as easily accessible as what they are today. There was literally one person of who everybody knew of in my area that did that. And he ultimately turned out to be a bit of a cunt, if I'm honest. The way that he dealt with things, his interpersonal skills was awful. And actually, we parted ways 3 weeks out from my first competition, simply because he said I was asking too many questions. So think about that for dropping someone, asking too many questions. Did the first show. I came 6th, I think it was, out of 15 athletes. And of course, I was in bits, I was in tears, crying, but I was a failure. And this is something I spoke about recently is with athletes that I coach and prep, where, you know, they almost feel like it's a God-given that they're going to get first place with their first show. Yeah. But it's a process. Bodybuilding is a process, and it takes a lot of failure and near misses before you get that glory. And obviously at the time I didn't know that. I thought I was the hardest worker in the room. No one's going to outwork me, you know. So after drowning my sorrows in about 10 Big Macs post-show, I then gathered the feedback from the judges, which was that I had a good level of muscularity and excellent conditioning and would suit better in bodybuilding. So I then took 18 months out in an off-season to do what was necessary. And that's when I made the decision then to transition to PEDs, if you like, and come to the dark side. And then kind of from there, it's been a progressive input of off-season diet, but long off seasons. You know, I'm not one of these who will do a 3 or 4 or 5 month growth phase and then jump back into prep for the sake of it, because I know that's not long enough to warrant new muscle tissue and to bring a better physique than your last showing.
Well, I think most people have this illusion that you can go into a surplus for 3 months and you're going to suddenly turn into the Hulk, when in truth, you want to spend as much time as possible in a surplus and as a minimal in that prep phase, don't you? Because even if you are assisted, it's not like you're going to put on a ton of muscle just because you're adding a bit more extra substances into your system. So you still got to work as hard. So yeah, I'm the same. Like I'm currently, I think, nearly 10 months into a surplus, and it's probably the first time I've had that long of a surplus.
But it's needed. It's required. And even like with Gen Pop, you know, lifestyle clients who want to gain muscle, you have to go through a period of cutting and bulking. But when I cut a lifestyle client, it's short and sweet. You know, it's an aggressive cut, simply because I want to spend more time with that person in a surplus growing. So an aggressive mini cut and then a long extensive growing phase is the way to go forward. But I think, you know, like you just mentioned, I think too many people these days, they feel that, you know, they can gain the necessary improvements with a 3 or 4 month growing phase. And I think that's simply because they miss the glam and the glitz of prep. And I think the kind of frequent affirmations and gratifications that they get through social media, which is probably another topic we'll get onto
that's
a little bit later.
That's something I wanted to touch on, in the sense that, because obviously from that point of view, you want to come across lean all year round, don't you? Because that's what sells, unfortunately. You don't necessarily want to see the fat bodybuilder, do you?
No.
You want to see the guy who's lean, and if you're a so-called influencer or doing it for that, then you want to be in this lean condition all year round, instead of just you know, going into this long period of just being potentially slightly a bit fluffy. And
I think you're a lot more in the spotlight as well when you're in prep, and I think also that's because the visual changes become more frequent when you're in a cutting phase. You know, every day you see a new line, a new cut, a new little bit of separation, and obviously when you post that content onto social media, you're getting these likes, these comments, these constant remits of affirmation and gratification, and they make you feel good. And I think, without going off too much of a tangent here, that I think a lot of people, they live for that, this feel of wanted and needed and loved and cared for. But in essence, what that's doing is only disabling your ability to progress as an athlete, because you're just constantly cutting all the time and dieting show after show after show. Whereas, like we just said, you need to be in
I even think from a coaching point of view as well, like if you're coaching someone through that prep phase or that deficit, you've got tangible things each week to kind of give feedback on.
Yeah.
But when you're in a surplus, you know, it's quite hard. I've found this as a coach when I've got people who are like in that kind of growth phase now, giving them feedback, because you're not getting those changes every week like you would do in a deficit.
Yeah.
So the athlete is almost not getting that gratification. So, and I think it's one of those things where they want to rush to get back into that prep. And I'm pretty similar, because again, the first time I've been in this long bulk now, and I find it with I mean, I still love the fact that my coach Alex can still give me feedback when I check in each week, because I'm not really seeing any changes, but his coaching eye does.
It is harder for a coach when you're coaching in the off season, because the changes are so few and far between, and it's difficult to get across to the client that we are progressing, we are moving in the right direction, and it's almost because you're not making as frequent changes with the program as you would in prep. It's kind of like, you know, is this working? Am I getting value for my money with your coaching and stuff like that? So yeah, I do get it. It's prep's a funny thing. Prep is a funny place for so many right now. And you know, I'm trying to install into my athletes that, you know, if they want to be a successful athlete and do well on the circuit, you know, finishing prep in October and then starting back up in February, March the next year, you're not going to be improved. You know, so we got to take 12 months out, and that's what I did with myself. The sort of minimal amount I would take out between shows is 12 months. You know, so I'd compete, I'd go out 12 months, 18 months sometimes, do what's required, improvements, work on my structure and shape that I wanted to present with Classic. And then that's kind of how it progressed with me, until I got my bicep tear in 2019, and then obviously that was a tough time. That was a tough time.
I'll come back to that in a second. I want to go back to one point when you said your first show you had those 10 Big Macs. What was it that made you click and think, okay, why don't you just go down a deeper hole? What made you come out of that and think, okay, I've had my little moment now, I've picked myself up. What was driving you forward to be like, okay, I can do this?
I think when I got the judges' feedback in the email, and it kind of was indirectly saying that I had potential, but potentially in the wrong category, and like I'm very aware of the long game, and that I was never going to be kind of a success after one show, you know. And that's bodybuilding in general. It's always work in progress. You're never done. Never. You can always improve. So I felt like, okay, this is kind of a draft run. I've done all right, not too bad. Let's live it now, because that was my first show. Let's live this world now for a good 18 months and see what I can do. And that's kind of what the driving force for me was at the time is, okay, let's see how far I can push myself. Let's see, you know, if I apply my mind to this 100% off season now for a good 12, 18 months, live in this world, eating clean, training hard, nothing else, blinkers on, let's see what we can achieve. And then the next show I did classic and I got first place out of, I think, a lineup of 8, I think it was 8 athletes. And it was a pretty good standard in that show as well.
What was the feeling when you won?
Euphoric, mate. It was euphoric. That's the only word I can describe, because, and I think any athlete can relate here, that once you know that you've put in your all into something and you didn't leave a stone unturned, and you finally get rewarded for that, there's no better feeling, you know, in terms of accomplishment, self-accomplishment, and achieving something. And I will never forget that moment, because it was almost like when they called my number and name, everything went quiet around me. It was kind of a surreal moment. And yeah, I cried then as well. Tears, yeah, but of joy this time,
Yeah, not tears of sorrow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that in the PCA then as well?
That was PCA.
Cool.
Yeah, that was the Kettering show in 2017, I think that was.
And you pretty much have been a PCA athlete since, haven't you?
Yeah, cool. I won't touch two bros. Okay. I have many reasons why I won't touch two bros.
Yeah.
We could talk about that if you like, but I don't really care.
Yeah. Because I've never really made much into the PCA league. I've always kind of had that focus on the NPC. Because obviously that's one we see as one that's going to take you to the Olympia, but, which is obviously a big stage. But I do see a lot of athletes come through the PCA who look absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and I was talking about this with someone the other day, and you know, when people they talk about the pro card and the pro card with IFBB and the pro card with PCA, and they're not the same, and this, that, the other. But that's kind of subjective to the individual and their goals. If their goal is to stand on the Olympia stage one day, then they're going to have to get on the NPC, right? But if they want to go out and, you know, enjoy their hobby, because after all, at the end of the day, it's a fucking hobby, you know. I don't care how good that you think that you are, there's a very small portion minority that's actually going to make it to the very, very top. And for me, when I compare the experience between a two bro show and a PCA show, there's no contest there. And at the end of the day, if it's a hobby, I want the best experience. So for me, yeah, PCA is always kind of the route for me. And not that I push my clients to go down that route. Like, they'll go wherever they want. You know, I don't say you must compete with PCA or am I going to coach you. I've had many clients compete with many different federations. And ultimately, I'm led by the client. But also, there's other coaches out there that kind of specify and niche with certain federations, whether that's consciously or subconsciously. There are, you know, there's other coaches, as we probably know, that they deal with two bros only. But for me, PCA, you know, they're the fed for me.
So you've won that show.
Mm-hmm.
You've got that euphoria. What happens next? How long does that last?
That lasted a good week or two.
Yeah.
I think it was back to business. Back to business, you know. And I think this is one of the problems with bodybuilding. It's fucking addictive. It's like a fucking drug. That feeling of being in euphoria. You kind of don't want it to end. And even though when you do come off cloud nine, you're then chasing it again. Yeah, so it was back to work for me. And then I went into another extensive off season then from 2017 to I competed next in 2019. That was the Saxon Classic, and I came first again in that show. And then after that show was when the troubles with the bicep came.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. That was well, that was 2019. That went on for about 2 or 3 years with the shit that went on with that.
How did you injure the bicep?
So did that show, won first place, and then the partner that I was with at the time, we were due to go on holiday like a few days after, recoup, some downtime. I remember waking up in the morning and saying to her, let's go and get a quick arm session in before we catch the flight. So we went down to the gym, normal arm session, nothing quick and crazy. I just finished the show, so just like, let's get the pump on. But halfway through the session, we were doing some preacher curls with dumbbells, and about 4 reps in, again, something I will never ever forget. The whole experience, the sounds, everything. So I was coming down with a rep, and as I came down, it was like Velcro tearing. It's like, and I looked, and then I watched my biceps shoot up to the top of my arm there. I didn't know much about it after that because I passed out. There was people aside the other side of the gym that said they heard the pop, the tear. And then I came round in the gym, and then I said to my missus at the time, right, let's go and get a sling, we'll go and get the suitcases, and then we'll go on the plane and fuck off. Because I didn't really know what was going on. I've never had a bad injury before. And although I know it didn't sound right or look right, it wasn't much to me, So we only got a sling from the pharmacy, went back to mine, grabbed the cases, and then I passed out again. And then it was like, okay, we need to get down to A&E. So they scanned it, and they said, yeah, it's a full detachment from the radius bone where the tendon attaches in. It fully detached and regressed at my arm. And with this kind of injury, they have to operate pretty quickly before the scar tissue starts accumulating. So I was in within about, I think, 7 to 8 days, and that's with the NHS as well. So that's kind of, how serious it is to get that done if they've got me in that quickly. So had the surgery done, which is about, I think it was about 2 hours surgery, and they basically just make a little incision there. Well, that's my bicep. But I'll tell you what, it looks like that a little bit later. But they make an incision there, and they kind of pull the bicep back down. They drill through your bone, put it through, and then staple it so it stays in place. So that's what they did. But they also mistakenly gave me tramadol and Orimorph, which are opiate-based drugs, which we haven't spoke about, but I've got epilepsy. And if you give those types of drugs to people with epilepsy, it lowers your threshold to have a seizure. So 2 days after the surgery, that medication caused me to have a seizure. And my seizures are tonic-clonic, so they're very rigid. Foam in the mouth, wet myself. And as I was seizuring, the surgery came off, and I was fucked again. And then there was a long wait then, because it was kind of in and around the COVID period that was coming. This was end of 2019, so into 2020. So it was like 7 months then till I had the second surgery. But in between the second rupture from the seizure to the second surgery, there was like hospital appointment after hospital appointment. Also, my driving license being revoked, because if you have a seizure, the DVLA take your license off you. Obviously, all of this that was going on was having a massive strain on my relationship at the time. I wasn't very good to be around. I was a negative Nelly. And I was, it's fair to say I was slipping into a bit of a dark place with things. And then I guess even after the second surgery, which was about 7 months after, it took me a while then to get out of this dark place. I would say probably I was in there for about 12 months in that spot. You know, where you just can't see any light at the end of the tunnel.
What was going through your head at that time? What sort of thoughts? What was that dark space?
Why me? I think, you know, why me? Because everything was going so fucking well, you know. You know, when everything's going so well in your life, and then boom, it just knocks you off your feet, just out of nowhere. And it was snowballing then. Like everything seemed to be coming at me from every angle. The tear, the surgery, the seizure, the loss of my driving license, my relationship broke down. So I didn't get to go on fucking holiday, you know. All these things just kept hitting me, you know. And when I look back now, like Mr. Stallone slides right. It's not about how many times you get knocked down. It's, you know, cliche, but it's fucking right. But yeah, there was you know, there was moments that I didn't want to be here. You know, when you're in that place, like it doesn't matter what anyone fucking says to you. You go into that period of self-pity, self-hatred, and you know, probably to many this sounds very trivial what I'm saying, but my experiences that I had. But for me personally, it was like the end of the fucking world. I was getting some success with my bodybuilding. I had a good relationship per se. And yeah, it kind of felt like, why me?
At what point then did you come out of that? What changed? Because it's quite easy to stay there, isn't it? To be the victim, to always just sit there.
Yeah, I don't think it was anything in particular. I don't think it was anything that anyone particularly said to me. I just think that, you know, things do just start to brighten up, and I think nothing lasts forever. No feeling or emotion lasts forever, positive or negative. So I think that, you know, when you are going through shit like that, you just have to hold the fuck in there. And you know, when it times do get tough, you know, even at the time when you are going through that stuff, be mindful that it will pass. You know, and fortunately, it did. And then, you know, you just start doing little micro things progressively, and then your life just starts getting back on track to where it was. And for me, after that, it was the rebuild. You know, because obviously with all the injuries, I started to look like someone who hadn't lifted ever.
I know that feeling.
So that was the focus for me, was making a comeback. Because after doing that last show before I tore my bicep, I'd gained obviously British qualification, and one of my big goals was to stand on a British stage. I'd never done that. So that was the driving force then. That was the end goal, was to rebuild, to build back on top of my physique, then strip down and get qualification for a British final, which took me all of 18 months, 2 years to achieve, which I did in 2021. That's when prep commenced again, and then went through that, and I stood on the stage, got British champion, and I got awarded my pro card as well. So I guess it's that never die attitude. You know, you just got to keep going when shit's tough. You just got to keep moving forward, and eventually, you know, it doesn't last forever, and good things will come, kind of thing.
How many shows have you done since then? What?
Since then,
since that time,
none. So
you retired this year, didn't you?
Last year, actually, yeah. I shut that down through a number of reasons. But since I got my pro card, no, I haven't competed once. The goal was to stand on a British stage. I surpassed that with becoming British champion and getting my pro status. And then I said, after that, then I would retire. There's nothing left for me to achieve in my remit of my goals. Like the IFBB never interested me. So now I've got my pro card and PCA. Where can I go? Apart from do a pro show, but that's it. So I thought, well, I've been doing this for 10 years now. It's time to probably go and focus on other ventures. So no, I've done no shows since then. Although that said, I started a prep last year and documented it quite heavily, the Road to Pro show. And then I cut that short at 5 weeks out last year because it was just, there was too many external factors that were building up that were compromising my health, my business, and I quickly realised that, you know, a plastic fucking trophy is not worth it.
Yeah.
You know, I got far more to lose than I have gained by continuing with this prep. And I think, and people ask me now, like, do you regret shutting that prep down last year? And it's like, I don't regret it because in the moment, that was the right decision to do. Do I regret that I've shut a prep down? Yes. But in the moment, at the time, it was the right decision to do. Because, and I've documented this quite heavily on my YouTube, the reasons why. And we can talk about this on the podcast, no problem. It was, it wasn't worth it, you know? So, yeah.
Why wasn't it worth it?
Well, I got diagnosed with borderline personality disorder in 2022. And I guess when people hear that name, they think of some crazy lunatic psychopath.
Sort of Jekyll and Hyde character, yeah.
Yeah, because it's got such a very rigid, edged, distorted term, as in borderline personality disorder. It doesn't sound great, right? And it comes in so many different shapes and sizes, like a lot of mental health conditions do. But for me personally, how it affects me is emotional dysregulation, for sure. Like 1 minute I'm high as a kite, or was prior to the therapy off the back of this diagnosis, was highs and lows, fear of abandonment, resentment, seeing things black and white. So if we started having a sort of converse now, a dialogue about something, and you said something to me and I didn't agree with it, I wouldn't even consider your opinion. I'll just tell you you're fucking wrong, you know? Obviously I've learned on how to deal with that a little bit better. But for me, the emotional dysregulation going up and down, when you kind of factor that in with a prep, with everything that's included with PEDs, lack of sleep, stress, whatnot, and when you consider that I went through 27 hours worth of therapy to improve on oneself to manage that condition, like I wasn't going to jeopardize that. It just wasn't worth it.
How did you get diagnosed? What triggered you to reach out to that individual to get that diagnosed?
Well, I've kind of always known for a while that something wasn't quite right. You know, I don't think like others do. I don't act sometimes like others do.
But then how do people act and think like that? Like what made you think that you didn't feel right?
I don't know. I guess like sometimes historically when I've been in a room with people, I've kind of got like a sense or an aura that they feel I'm a bit obscure, a little bit left of centre, a little bit quirky, if you like. So then I'm off the back of that thinking something's not right. And then some of the thoughts that I get as well, I feel like something wasn't quite normal, if you like. I've had bad relationships, business, family, you know, and it was only till someone said to me, have you heard about this condition? I don't know. So I did a little bit of research on it. And then obviously with borderline, there's like 9 traits. And then I was looking at them and I was like, yeah, that resonates a little bit.
What are those 9 traits?
So there's like fear of abandonment, fear of resentment, black and white, emotional dysregulation. I can't remember them all, but there's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I can remember looking at the list and thinking, yeah, I like that. That's kind of me. That's kind of me. So willingly, I booked an appointment with the doctor at the Priory, and as you know, if you've ever had any therapy, they they ask you some very triggering questions. They put you in a very vulnerable position, to be honest. And we spoke for about 3 hours in that first session, and we spoke about a lot of fucking stuff. And at the end of it, he said, "Yeah, no, you do qualify, and it sounds like you do have this." So then all of a sudden, immediately, I kind of felt liberated. You know that all these ways that I've acted historically, these thoughts that I've had, kind of make sense now. You know, and I kind of like, okay, well, I've got something to work with now. Now I know there's kind of an issue there, and when I think back on it now, like I guess I was in some sense of denial. You know, like I said to you, I kind of knew something wasn't right, and it's some of the things that I've done in my past I'm not proud of, and some of the things that have happened to me out of my control, and the ways that I've acted off the back of that kind of now all makes sense. And look, I'm not saying that it's an excuse for anything, but it's a reason. There's a cause for action, right?
It's a hard pill to swallow as well, to realize actually it may be you that was causing the problems.
The problem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's quite easy to blame the world, isn't it?
For sure. And I did a lot of that.
And
I did a lot of that.
yeah, but to take responsibility takes a lot of guts to realize actually I'm not the person I thought I was. Actually, there's things wrong.
Yeah. And I always remember a quote from Jay-Z, and it was like, what you reveal, you heal. You know?
Yep.
But you will never do that if you're in denial. And that's where I was. And I heard that quote maybe 3 or 4 years before I was diagnosed. So I'd heard that quote, but I wasn't ready to accept it, you know? So now when I think about it, it's like bang on the money. Like if you're ready, like a heroin addict, you know, you could say to someone like, "This is an intervention. You need help." But if he doesn't see that he's got an addiction, there's no point sending him into rehab. You know, he's got to willingly want to change.
It's like with anything, therapy, AA, whatever it is, you've got to be willing to do. Otherwise, it's not going to go anywhere if you're forced to do it.
Yeah. Nah. So yeah, off the back of that, we did about 26, 27 hours worth of therapy, which was very soul searching, deep, talking about topics that I've never spoken about, and certainly wasn't comfortable about talking. But like again, you know, once you become vulnerable and you're okay with being vulnerable and talking about your thoughts and your feelings, you feel very liberated once you do, and you kind of then start unloading and emptying all of this pent up sort of maybe aggression that you've been holding, and hatred for the world, and that's kind of what I was, you know, sort of holding in for a very long time, and then kind of learning tools how to manage these traits that I've got with my BPD more efficiently and effectively in real world scenarios. So yeah, that was one of the big reasons why I shut that prep down last year. And also there was other things as well, like my sleep was being compromised horrifically. My business was very, very busy at the time, so I, like an idiot, picked the wrong time to compete for myself. So yeah, that was shut down, and like I said, I don't regret shutting it down, because in the moment, like, it was the right time, and anyone that was around me in that period kind of knows how I was truly, those closest to me, and they know that if I would have carried on the way I was going, like again, I probably wouldn't be here today, because it was a recipe and a road to disaster.
How have you changed now then? So you've acknowledged those kind of shadows, that element of yourself you're hiding. Has it made you a better man, a better person?
I think allow myself to be vulnerable. Like, there's a, well, there certainly used to be a stigma about hiding your emotions and, you know, I've got to be a geezer. I can't fucking talk about that. You fucking joking? Nah, you.
Well, we touched on this, haven't we? Like, what does it mean to be a man?
Mm.
You know, and I have my view on it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think we have a similar mindset on that. And one of the key things is to be vulnerable. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, there was a great podcast with Chris Williamson and Chris Bumstead. I don't know if you've seen it.
Well, that's it. I mean, I'm very much in that same mindset that I've always had that view that we, you know, to really be as a man and holding ourselves, we need to acknowledge the good or bad. But it's interesting how we kind of break it down to like the conscious is good and the subconscious is bad, or the subconscious is your shadow and the conscious is light. But it's like they both serve each other. You know, it's just integrating that. And something I mentioned the other day about being an integrated man, of like, you've got to face that side of yourself where you never really are true to who you are. And sometimes that takes a lot of guts to acknowledge that side.
Yeah.
But I think we're in a space now where some people go too far down that line. They kind of lose that masculinity as well.
Okay.
So I think Chris Bumstead said it straight, where it's like, have your masculine and feminine energy
for sure
together.
That's true masculinity.
Yeah,
when you can be okay with showing your soft, caring, emotional, sensitive side, along with being assertive and protective and providing. That's true masculinity for me.
You can.
When you talk about masculinity and femininity, and you know, what are they? If you were to describe that to someone, right? For me, when someone talks about what's a masculine, what you're actually doing is, what can you provide the opposite sex? Yeah, and it's the same with a woman. What is it being a feminine or femininity? It's what can a woman provide their counter gender. So for me, as being a male, like, it's to protect, to provide, to make that individual feel safe and secure. You know, and the same with a woman. I would assume that it's kind of the same sort of narrative and dialogue is, you know, it's not a selfless act. It's a selfless act in what you're providing.
That's the thing though. Like, to be feminine is a great thing as a woman. Like, there's no life for that women.
Yeah.
You know, that nurturing aspect they have. You know, but they forget that now, because it's very much a case of, like, I'm all for people going out there living an empowered life and standing on their own 2 feet, but why is it you want to try to be like the opposite sex, when it's just like, own who you are, because there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
You know, and I think it's a great space right now for both genders, because, you know, we're both in a space where we can provide for ourselves and earn our money and so forth, but it shouldn't take away from who we are. You know,
like hundreds of years of evolution and roles and I'm not saying things shouldn't progress. No. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But it's almost become like a bit of a competition in the game now, like, which is the superior gender.
Yeah.
And it's like, there isn't. Like, we're all equal, man.
Yeah. You know, I mean, if you want to, whatever you want to believe in, but, you know, God made man and woman for a reason. If we weren't meant to have these, then this wouldn't have happened.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so there's definitely a purpose for it, isn't there? It's not just like, oh, you know, by chance they were a man and a woman.
No.
There's a reason for it. And I personally think, like, a man should be able to stand on his own 2 feet, provide, and be that kind of warrior and that emotional support. But a good woman can definitely take that man to a next level.
Yeah.
Because I feel like
for sure.
It's the same thing with having children. Your heart rises up and you become something greater. Mm-hmm. And I don't personally feel that you can achieve that without the woman. That's my opinion.
You need that little bit of nurture there.
Yeah.
You know? Just changing it slightly, the one thing that fucking bugs me to death at the moment is this toxic masculinity narrative that's being pushed at the moment. It's like, these words should not be connected. Yeah. Like, they're separate entities, man.
Well,
like, if you're toxic, you're toxic.
Yeah.
It don't matter if you're man, female, dog,
Yeah.
fish, pig. It don't matter. If you're toxic, you're toxic.
Well, why don't we talk about toxic femininity?
You're not toxic
yeah.
because you're a masculine.
Yeah.
You're toxic because you're narcissistic, manipulative, controlling behaviours.
Yeah.
Man or female.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, words have lost meaning now.
Yes, exactly.
You know, we throw things out without actually thinking what do they mean.
Mm.
You know, but it's just everything's a buzzword now. You're an ist, you're that, you're this. But what does that actually mean in the context of what you're trying to say?
It's a strange one because we want to feel like we can have a conversation.
Yeah.
You know, to come to resolutions and agreements and whatnot, but when people are just like you say, talking without thought, due care, and attention, they're just spouting these things off. You just think about all of the narratives that have been pushed since COVID, with Black Lives Matter, Me Too movement, all these different things that, look, really, and I'm not saying there hasn't been oppression or there hasn't been slavery. There's fucking slavery today.
Yeah.
You know, who the fuck do you think made this?
Yeah.
It wasn't Apple, you know, it was probably some kid earning 6 pence an hour at some sweatshop.
The cobalt mines, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You know, but we don't ever hear about that on the news or social media, really.
It doesn't get the clickbait.
No.
It doesn't get the attraction.
No, it's.
But I also think like we're in a space now where a lot of people are trying to find themselves, and kind of following these organizations or these narratives gives them some sense of purpose. And you can't really blame them because they're looking for something.
Yeah.
And that gives them that. Whether it's an actual genuine connection, probably not. But for some little brief thing, it does give them this sense of community.
Yeah.
And all for it. You know, like I'm all for everyone go out there, do your thing. But when it starts to harm other people and it affects me directly, then it's like, no, it's not good.
Yeah, and obviously the media outlets have got a big role to play.
Well, this is it though. I mean, when's the last time you had something positive in the news?
Yeah.
Everything's geared up in my eyes to just bring you down in the news. But unfortunately, this is it though. We wake up, the first thing we do is pop open our phones and scroll through our Instagrams or check the news, and straight away we're triggered. Something triggers us, and the rest of the day is just a cascade effect of just negative emotions. You know, and
how do you get away with it? How do you get away from it? It's there constantly. Unless you get rid of your phone, it's there. But then with that said, like, you're in charge of what you consume.
That's it. You know, but you're also in charge of how you respond to those things.
Mm.
You know, this is where having that kind of a level of emotional awareness to be like, okay, cool, I'm observing that, but I'm not going to let that interfere with my internal frame of mind.
Yeah.
That's a skill.
What do you think about today's society in terms of when the term snowflake or gets thrown around in terms of today's society generation, what's coming up through the ranks?
It's an interesting one because I do feel like this is the first generation when they haven't actually faced any sort of real famine, war, but they've faced their own hardships in their own way. So I'm kind of in the middle where I can kind of get where they're coming from, because we can't really say that our adversity was harder than theirs because it's all relative to them.
Yeah.
But I do think people need to have a bit more grit.
Mm.
And I don't think people are willing to fight anymore and actually do the work to be better people. So there is this kind of like, yeah, I do think this generation is slightly softer. Doesn't mean they're anything less, but it's just, I feel like when you've kind of been growing up and everything's been given to you on a plate, you kind of almost take it for granted. So when you go into the real world and someone does challenge you and someone says no, you kind of feel a bit attacked. And the only way for them is to rebel and to do these things, which is, again, that's their choice to do so. But yeah, they need a bit more grit. You know,
I think that's spot on. It's the parenting. And not parents, you can kill me, whatever. But I do feel that the way that you nurture a child these days, or at any point, is going to be crucial to how they develop and position themselves in the world.
I mean, I grew up in a very traditional Indian family. My dad was Mr. Tough Guy. My mum was very over-mothering. So it made me feel kind of very insecure, very much that I wasn't good enough, to the point where I wanted to take my life when I was 14. But I was able to snap out of that and realise that that was their way of trying to raise me up, because parents aren't these supreme beings. they're just like us. They're just
Yeah.
like you've had more years on
Yeah.
us. That's it. But they're like us. They've got their own trauma, their own things they've gone through, and all they're simply doing is trying their best to kind of raise you through what they know.
Yeah, and probably also protect you from some of the trauma that
Yes.
they've experienced.
Oh yeah, I mean, growing up, I never had a typical teenage life. I was always working. You know, I didn't. If my friend said let's go out, I'd be like, "Sorry guys, I've got to close the shop." Yeah, typical Indian. I had a grocery shop, but it wasn't on the corner. It was in the middle. But yeah, I'd have to always be there, and I resented my parents for a moment. But then I realised that no, they were giving me these a good level of discipline, and B, did I actually want to be out there getting drunk or smoking cannabis or whatever it is? No, you know. So
Yeah.
I'm actually grateful for that. And
That
then
sounds much like my life.
well, this is it. I mean, and from a young age, the first thing I learned was to forgive them and forgive myself for feeling the way I did, because I'm very much that person. Yeah, I try to put myself into that individual's shoes. My parents came here in '70s. Dad was probably 13. You know, both married when they were 19. You come to a foreign country. You know, you can't speak a word of English. You're trying to raise a family. They did their best.
Yeah.
But yes, parenting does have a place into this case culture, and this is another thing now we're trying to break away that nuclear family, that kind of buzzword. We're like, parents don't matter anymore. We don't need a father. We don't need a mother. We can do it solo. Like, no,
No,
you know,
that's definitely not the case. 100%. No.
You know, again, there's like I'm a very traditional man. I believe in that sanctity of marriage and having a solid relationship and making things work. When things are broken, you fix it. You don't just go onto an app and replace it. You know, find another girl or another guy. No, you work on it.
Mm.
And this is the thing we're in now. When you talk about what's the culture like now, we're in a very much a instant gratification space where it's like dating apps. You jump on a dating app, you got your girl, cool, you have this great honeymoon period with them, this high, and then you actually got to do the work now.
Yeah.
Face the relationship.
The first argument comes,
yeah.
How are you going to deal with that?
Yeah. But then it's like, no, I'm not going to deal with that.
Mm.
I'll palm her off, I'll go back onto the app to get another person. Things have become very transactional.
Mm.
There's no connection anymore.
Mm. Yeah.
You know, and call me Mr. Traditional Old School, but that's I think when you meet someone, you make it work.
Yeah.
It's not Disney. It's not.
It takes two though, right?
That's it.
Like you've both got to make it work.
And that's why a lot of relationships struggle now, and there's a lot more divorces now. There's, you know, a lot of men. This is the first generation of men are not having as much sex or as still single. You know, and because it takes work.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes back to what you're saying about that kind of the culture now. Resilience makes you better. It makes you stronger. You need to have this. Yeah, something happened to you to make you.
I was talking about this with someone 2 days ago, and we were talking about people who have been through the most trauma tend to have the better resilience in the world. You know, people who have been through the most shit can deal with the sharp edges of the world because they've been exposed to it throughout their life. They're well equipped for it, you know. But I think if you've been raised and you've been handed everything on a plate and you've been protected, because I think there's a vast difference between being a good parent, caring and loving, providing, and then almost being over mommy cuddling, and going too far the other way, that it sort of suppresses them, and then when they get older, they don't know how to deal with a little bit of conflict.
That was my childhood, being overprotected cotton balled, and then having this tough approach from the other side. But there was never this. But I don't know what it was about me. I just had a bit of some self-awareness to come out of that. But yeah, it is that approach. You need to have that love and support, but you also need a bit of that kind of kit up the arse sometimes as well.
And like you mentioned there about the divorce rate is higher now than it's ever been, and that also has a bearing on the child.
Yeah.
If there isn't two parents, a father figure to be around him, which is what I experienced. And at the time growing up, you don't really think about it. It's not really an issue, right? Okay, dad's fucked off to the shop. That was 20 years ago. You know, you don't think about it. And it was only till I went through counselling for my BPD that I had it explained to me, like how much of a bearing that has on you as a child when he's not there for the conversations about sex, about relationships, to be there at your football matches, to be there at parents' evening, you know, birthdays, Christmases, things like this. At the time you think, oh, he's not here. I don't even remember those days, but it's only when you get older that you realise again, this isn't an excuse for some of the stuff that I've done or the way that my life's panned out at times, but it certainly had a bearing on it, you know?
Well, a lot of our so-called traumas and things do come from our childhood, and they get suppressed, and you don't realize it until you actually potentially talk about it and unravel that you guys actually this is coming from. They're not a recent thing. We just bury them deep within us.
Yeah.
You know, that was me growing up. You know, but it was came by questioning those beliefs and actually. I'd never seen a therapist. A lot of my own sort of things I did myself from the age of 14, of going down that rabbit hole and understanding who I was and change that. Funny enough, though, 2 months ago, I did reach out to a therapist because I thought maybe I needed to see one because I just come out of a relationship. And I had 2 sessions with her and she's like, you don't need a therapist. You know, and it kind of, for some ways, it did clarify that I was on the right path. So, but I had that courage enough to say to him, maybe I did need to see one. And then when I did, I was like, okay, no, you don't.
Yeah, because there's an element of doubt whether you thought you had it all sorted yourself, or maybe doubting that you were going down the right path. But now that you've seen the therapist,
because I think
you
sometimes
kind of got it.
I would definitely say we've created a therapy culture at the moment.
Yeah.
Because everywhere you go now, it's looking at it's like, oh, here's better health, here's this drug to help you with mental health, or this and that. It's like, we don't need that.
No, and this is one of the things, again, I was talking about this with someone the other day. And look, it's clear I'm a very big advocate of mental health because of my condition and, you know, people I know taking their lives throughout my time and whatnot. It's almost become fashionable now.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is people uploading stories of them crying and this has happened and that's happened and this, and for me that's not the right way to approach it. Like, you need to go and speak to someone, like, and you know, self-admit and try working on yourself, because all that's doing by doing such things is you're just looking for support and gratification of people who don't even give a shit about you and are ultimately not going to help you. And although you might get a few comments in your inbox saying, I'm here if you need me, they fucking ain't.
Yeah.
They're not. No. They're not. They don't give a shit. All they're doing is looking at it as entertainment for them.
Well, people only
as harsh as that is.
People will only care about you when you care about them.
Yeah.
It's very rare to find someone who's genuinely there just because they want to be there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, and this is it though. It's because people haven't gone through that fire risk and then they just it's just they're soft. You know, and again, everyone's got their things. I can't say someone's trauma or issues is not as bad as mine, but it's all relative. But at the same time, you can't keep playing the victim then.
No, it's like someone saying, you know, I've got a real bad bouts of anxiety. You know, you could go for a job interview and be anxious. That doesn't mean to say you've got a clinical issue. You could be nervous about a first date. That doesn't mean to say that
you've got an actual clinical issue. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, these are normal feelings and emotions.
We have. Yeah,
if you didn't feel that, I'd be worried.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, like, every time I come up to do one of these, I get anxious.
Yeah.
I'm always like.
I was a little bit nervous coming up, to be honest, but you know that means I give a shit.
Yeah.
I want this to work and hopefully put out some useful stuff for people.
I get this as a coach. Sometimes when I see a client not progressing, my first thing is to question myself: am I a good coach? Have I done something wrong?
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, calm down. It's because the key word he says you care.
Yeah.
You know, if I was just like whatever, it's pointless then. No, but this is it now. Like the world, yes, it's everyone's got their narrative. Everyone's going for whatever, but you need to, for one moment, stop beating yourself up. Stop playing the victim card, and take responsibility.
That's the key.
Yeah. You know, and I know for me, training was the outlet that made me realize actually, I wasn't this idiot that I thought I was. I wasn't weak. I wasn't insignificant. I actually had a lot in me to give and a lot of strength. I'm not the smartest guy, you know, but I was damn well emotional. And
it is. It's about finding hope in adversity, you know, because we were all going to face it at some point in our life.
Yeah.
No matter what degree, you know, everyone's is but respected for their own, like whatever it is, whatever trauma, whatever issue they've got. But it's how you ultimately deal with that in the end, and that's going to determine what path you go down. With my upbringing, it wasn't Traditional, it wasn't normal. There was a lot of slaps in the face, shall we say. I went down a lot of bad paths. And if I hadn't have intervened myself and thought, okay, like this isn't going to end well, I probably again wouldn't be sat here today. I'd either be dead or in prison. You know, some of the things that I've experienced and some of the choices that I've made, they weren't wise ones.
Expand on that. What is it? What would be a
Shot
traditional
myself in the foot there, didn't I? Fuck you.
What would be a traditional upbringing for you then? You're
What was my upbringing?
No, what would be one? So you're gonna potentially meet someone soon. You're gonna
Okay.
build a family. What would be the? What advice would you give to people who are looking to venture into that world now, to be fathers, to be good men? What's that advice you can partner?
Well, I think first of all there isn't. I guess when I say a normal upbringing, I guess I'm basing that off when I was at school, what I had, as opposed to what I was seeing with the 2.4 children family, with the little dog, getting the paper and all that sort of shit. That's what I perceived to be the normal growing up. But then as I got older, I guess I feel that there isn't, or there shouldn't be any stipulation to what that looks like. At the end of the day, it's what you and your partner want it to look like. That doesn't mean say you could have a girl and a boy and a dog and a big house and a big garden and, you know, both be employed, and it can be whatever that will look like that makes you happy, you know. And I guess it's, for me, it's one that is calm, chilled, drama free, because a lot of my life has been fulfilled with drama and chaos. And yeah, just a lot of good times with a lot of love. That for me is kind of what the end game would look like. Yeah. What about you?
Well, I thought I had that coming. I was in a relationship, but that kind of ended, and I realised actually the one thing about me as an individual, I'm quite content in myself. A lot of my happiness and joy comes from within me. I'm very intrinsically driven. So when I choose to be with someone, I don't ask for a lot from someone because I'm content myself.
Yeah.
I'm choosing to share my journey with someone. And about 2 months ago, it kind of all ended all of a sudden because I thought we were going to have a future and we were planning that next. And I actually realised in that moment that maybe I do deserve a bit more.
Okay.
And maybe a part of me doesn't believe I deserve that. So I was not settling, but...
Is that based on your upbringing though, and you not getting very many compliments?
Yes.
Or feeling of self-worth, like you mentioned earlier?
That's it, because a lot of me growing up now has been validating myself through my own self-analysis, my training. I don't know if you know much about love languages, but I'm very much one who's based on words of affirmation and touch. I never got that from my parents.
No, I can relate with that.
So I've always been the person that did that for others. I'm the one that lifts others up because I never got that myself, so I want people to feel like that. And then obviously in my 20s, I realised I had to lift myself up first. I had to fill my cup up if I wasn't going out there and do things for others. And I learned the hard way by having my accident, my cancer and so forth. But so for me, moving forward now is not necessarily having this list of criteria with someone, but it's meeting someone who actually values me as an individual and is there for me in the good times, but is also there for me when shit is hitting the fan.
Yeah.
Because the truth is, as strong as of a person that I am, I need support.
Yeah.
And there are times when I feel weak. Even this whole idea of this podcast has been something I wanted to do for years, and it was only when I think I mentioned him every podcast, but I'm grateful to him. Is Callum gave me that little push to say you need to do this, and I had this sense of validation from someone I admired in the industry, and I did it. But that's what I need. So when I look at that future with a partner, is like I'll move heaven and earth for that individual, but I just want someone who will listen, who will be on that kind of cheerleader, you know. And then we grow together. Because for me, a relationship is two individuals.
It's a teamwork, man.
Yeah, they're already
it's 50-50. It's teamwork.
Not even 50-50. I think it's 100% for each individual.
Yeah,
100% in their own context. Like, I'm quite happy to be the one that will provide financially, but you know, as long as she could do the emotional support for us and look after the kids, cool. But There's a great book I actually read with my now ex. I think it was called 10 Things I Knew Before I Got Married. And it was a quiz to kind of go through so you're ready for marriage.
Okay.
But it looks like we won't. But it's yeah, I mean, but again, it's relationship. Again, this is not Disney, this is not fairy tales. Relationships are going to start off on a nice high because it's new, but you've got to be willing to do the work because it takes effort, man, and it takes communication. You know, it takes being vulnerable, but it also takes being a man as a man. So that means to be strong and to go out there and provide and support them. And yeah, for me, the big thing is always communication.
Massive part.
So I think
massive.
a lot of us, things build up as men. We both know this, like things will build up, but men don't want to speak about it. You know, and then in relationships, there's something will trigger a man and he will have this massive
outburst.
But it's like, well, you can speak about it then.
Yeah. And this is what I was saying. I was exactly that man until I started having a little bit of therapy, and was kind of like went through different tasks and different kind of exercises to be like, okay, you can let your guard down a little bit. Like you can talk about how you feel and not feel less of a man for talking about those things. You can put yourself in a vulnerable position. Not only does that help yourself, but it helps your partner understand.
Yeah.
And they can resonate and probably then do the appropriate actions to show the emotional support that you need.
Well, I think in any relationship, from day one, you've got to set the tone. This is who I am. Like, these are my love languages. This is my sort of attachment style. Or this is how I am as an individual. Can we make this work? You know, so there's no surprises.
No.
I know it may be a bit heavy to do that straight away, but obviously, the better you can lay the foundations, the more you know what's going to be coming then.
Yeah, honesty is the best policy.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I struggled with pre-diagnosis was being honest a lot of the time. And it could be about something really stupid, you know, some big lies, but a lot of things really small as well. So even like I've been single for a few years, when I've been dating, I've been reluctant to tell people about my BPD straight away. Because then they're going to have this perception that you're some sort of fucking wacko.
Yeah.
You know? Because a lot of people don't actually know what this condition is to a large degree.
I didn't know until you told me.
Yeah. But it's even worse that you don't know, but when you don't know about it, because you just hear this term in your head and you think, oh shit, stay away from him. You know? I was kind of reluctant to tell people when I was dating them to begin with, in the fear that it would put them off. But now because I've become so used to it and I've accepted it, I don't give two fucks. I pretty much tell people now on the first date and just say, look, you know, this is what you're dealing with.
If you're in,
if you're in, you're in. If you're out, you're out. You know, but I will give you everything that you need now, like love, care, attention, fidelity. You have it all, like. But you have to understand, I do have this, and I'm going to have low days, and I'm probably going to need a little bit of emotional support, the odd back tickle now and again.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, I think communication and being honest is definitely something where a lot of relationships certainly fall short.
Definitely, man. Well, guys, that hour's gone quick.
Really?
So yeah, we're going to have to wrap this up, but we should definitely do a second episode.
Definitely,
I think there's a lot more we can dissect. So, closing thoughts. What advice would you give to young Sean if you were to talk to him now? And what's a few bit of advice you give up and coming bodybuilders and just men in general out there now? And women.
Bodybuilding?
So let's start with,
Well, there's two questions there. One life, one bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Okay. Bodybuilding, don't bother. Leave it. Just go to the gym, lift a few times a week, stay out of it. That's kind of a tongue-in-cheek joke. Yeah. There's obviously a lot of positives and a lot of negatives. But I think if you're in the right headspace and you're mentally strong, bodybuilding is a very, very good and very rewarding sport. It installs so many good traits through structure and routine, habitual habits, discipline for sure, which you can all transpire into your normal life. Normal life advice? You really want that from me?
Oh, this face went crazy.
Just don't be a cunt. You know, there's too many of them about at the moment in the world. You know, it's not hard to be a nice person. It really isn't. the odd encouraging word here and there to someone off the cuff. You know, don't wait for someone to send you something to then go and say, "Oh, you look amazing." Just say it sporadically, out, you know, something like that, because there's a lot, as we spoke about, a lot of hatred in the world with war or whatnot, or toxic masculinity, or all this war and male and female. I think just having a refreshing attitude of being non-biased and open to the world and not be so closed off. And just give out love, man.
Yeah.
I sound like a little bit like Bob Marley with that, but
no, but it's true. I mean, we're all on our journey, and ultimately, I feel we all want that same thing, and that's connection. And it doesn't take a lot to be a kind person.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't cost anything.
It doesn't. And I've learned that, like,
Yeah.
through therapy. Like I said, I was a right little terror growing up through my teens, early 20s, and even into my 30s to a large part. And it's only the last couple of 3 years that I've kind of really found who I am. And unfortunately, it's taken me to go through that period to find who I am. And I'll say to people, just don't let it run that long. You know, if you're a little bit lost and you feel something's not right, just get on it. And yeah, be a good person.
Cool, guys. Well, let's end with that. So, to conclude, be a good person.
Thank you, brother.
That's all right, mate. Thank you for coming on board. So, guys, thank you so much for listening to episode 4. Definitely going to get Sean back on because this was a great conversation, and I think I've been a bit more kind of vocal today as well. But thank you again for listening into this, and look forward to more in the future. Take care, guys.